If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Well, hey Brian, how's it going? Oh my goodness. As bad as that is, it doesn't surprise me at all. I don't know what the problem is with the DOC, but things like that are getting too commonplace and we really need to stop it. I'm not too familiar with the internal rules and laws and policies and stuff over there, but it does make sense that if a policy changes or a rule changes, you should be notified before you're written up for it. Yeah, I know. They feel that they're little gods walking around, gods and goddesses, and they can do whatever they want. And I can understand them feeling that way because we really don't check them. There's nobody that goes in there and monitors the actions and talks to the inmates, and then makes recommendations or pushes for change. I know the ombudsman would do things like that, but for something like this where you're doing something you've done for years and then suddenly you're written up because the rule changed and they didn't tell you. Yeah, 30 days does seem reasonable. And I've had police officers stop me for speeding and give me a warning. And I think people enjoy that because it's better than getting the ticket and spending the money or going to court. And it shows that they understand your plight. If you're zipping down the road because you're upset about something, or you just didn't realize what the speed limit was. You could give any kind of reason you want, but if the officer says, "Well, just consider this a warning," that's good. And this right here, it's more like the speed limit changed, and you're going for what you thought was the speed limit, and then you're pulled over and you're written up for something that's not even that you didn't even know about. Let's put it that way. And what you went through is the perfect example of them abusing their authority. I mean, there's no other way of looking at it. And you should have at least been given a warning. Because if you go in there and you say, "I didn't know about this," they should say, "Okay, well then now you do. Here's the rule book with the updates in it. Don't let it happen again." And I'm going to say most of the time that will be the case. People just will adhere to the rules, especially if you've been doing it for years. And the way they did it, it just causes a lot more resistance, a lot more ill feelings toward the guards, because you and those who know about the way this officer acts, they know what really happened, and then you'll have to go off and do appeals and file probably some complaints or something, and then
you have 60 seconds remaining.
Mumble and grumble when you're around the dinner table with the other inmates. So I'm definitely in your corner on this. There was no reason for them to treat you like that. And I hope this appeal will be good, because that, to me, that's a really good defense. You did not know. And I know out here law is not a defense, but they say that because it's your responsibility.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
To read the laws and understand them, especially when you're driving a car or if you're walking down the street or something. You should know the laws of the land. But when they changed the law, and don't broadcast it, don't tell anybody, it's natural to assume that it hasn't changed and to react the same way. If you did something completely off the wall, okay, but if you're just doing what you normally do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you for using inmate call. Goodbye.
Well, hello, and welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn, and in this episode, I'm basing this call and this topic off a conversation I had with Kimberly Carter. She called me up and she was obviously upset because she had been written up for violating a brand new rule that she wasn't properly notified about. And the officer who wrote her up quoted the rule, which is good. I give him credit for that. But he assumed that she already knew. And when she challenged them, it was more or less like, yeah, they hadn't gotten it out. So they weren't denying that the information wasn't properly shared, but they were more or less saying that you were written up and you just have to deal with it. And for her, she's ready to do an appeal. And of course, I asked her, I said, would you like to do a podcast on it? And she might. And in these type of podcasts, I like names to be mentioned. You know, Officer Smith wrote me up. Officer Jones held the hearing. Officer White imposed this sentence or infraction. So that shows that when people do hear something from their loved one and this name pops up again, we can detect a pattern. Because if Officer Smith is continuously writing people up for things that is obviously an abuse of authority, then should we file a lawsuit? And that's what I like to do. I like to get these lawsuits out there. Then we'll have a better foundation to work with. It's very hard to go into court and have one person testify and no other witnesses, no other evidence. But the more we have, the better our chances of winning. And this is an example of a case that we need to document. So she needs to write down the names, write down dates and times, keep a journal, and she said she's going to appeal. What happens in the appeal? How is it that an appeal committee or board could look at this and say she didn't even know, and then uphold the infraction? She said she's been working for years to stay out of trouble so she can get an early release date. And I know we have our opinions about the people who are locked up, and a lot of them are justified because these people knew what they were doing. They did it anyway. They could have harmed somebody or ruined somebody's life. You know, just it caused some kind of hardship to them, to either the victim or the victim's family or both. And now they're locked up. They got caught. They got convicted. They're sentenced. A lot of the folks, many of them that I talk to, they accept that. They committed the crime and they're doing their time. The thing that we don't hear about is how these people are mistreated. Being an American citizen, you have certain rights. And that's what sets us above everybody else out there. There's people that don't have the rights that we have. We have a lot of nice rights. And when they're taken away, especially after having them for years, you just kind of feel lost. And one of the biggest things is freedom. These folks are sitting in a prison cell and they can't do things we take for granted. They can't go on Facebook and update their post or check on the status of their friends, or they can't use the phone and call a loved one to check up on them. And if a person dies or goes to the hospital, they can't visit, can't go to the funeral, can't go to the hospital. And so those things that we just kind of look at, sometimes we just look at them as a burden. It's like, oh, I got to go to this funeral tomorrow and I really don't want to go. But these folks, they don't have that option. And yeah, they committed a crime. That's part of the punishment. But this thing about working really hard to get out early and then somebody comes along and pulls a stunt like that, that's not fair. And what we want is the people to come out of prison in better shape. Now, for me, I don't ask that they give fluffy pillows or hand warmers or special leather coats or anything like that. I just ask that they follow their own rules and their own policy. And to violate their own rule and then turn around and punish a person for violating the rule after it's been updated, it doesn't click with me. And that's one of the reasons I became a prison advocate, is because of things like this. There's people in there, they have violence. They'll get frustrated, or they'll get they're easily provoked by somebody, and then there's violence in there, and things get worse. They get thrown into solitary confinement, or they get infracted. And it's not because these people are wicked and evil. It's just that they're trying, and that's what we want. We want people to try to follow the rules, to try to do good, to try to better themselves. And these folks are doing it, but the staff is just pulling it all away. And how are you going to get a person to come out in better shape and feeling better about state government or law enforcement or the justice system when they're treated like this? And these are folks that have a tendency of breaking the rules and breaking laws. And then for the officials to go around and do the same thing and say, we are better, we can go home, we can be with our family. You can't, because you're on the bottom of the scale of importance. And it's very simple for us to just talk to these people. I've got recommendations for folks for my Securus account. So I add a name to it, and people will contact me. Oh, hey, I saw you added my name, and how are you doing? And we just have little conversations. And for me, it's not much, because I converse with people every day anyway. But for them, it means a lot, because they get to express some frustrations they have, like Kimberly did with me. She was very upset, and she got to call me and talk about it. And she feels better. We all feel better when we just let it out. And it's really simple to be a listener. But to have an organization that just kind of pushes that aside, how can you broadcast and advertise and brag about helping folks when you do things like that, where you just, they're standing straight trying to get out, and you just pull the rug out from underneath them? And they don't usually show that on those little TV dramas and stuff about people in prison, out on how badly they're treated. And advocates and family members, we're the ones that get it out, that show people. And I like the fact that social media is getting it out there, and I like the fact that there's a lot of things that are being broadcast. Now, there's some things they'll complain to me about that if they were out here, yeah, I'd work with them on it, but in there's really not too much. If they hate their job and they want a different one, oh well. But to have people change the rules and then tell them after they've committed the infraction, committed the infraction. And even out here, we see that happen. We'll go in and somebody would say something. It's like, you're not supposed to do that. And it's like, well, I didn't know. And the wise people, the people who are looking for peace and a quick compromise or whatever, they'll give people a break. If you didn't hear about it, and it was our fault because we didn't tell you, okay. But once people know it, especially after they sign that they've gotten that information, they should be held accountable. And that's the only reason people should be held accountable. If they know prior to committing the infraction, then they should be held accountable. But if they had no knowledge, Kimberly's appeal should go through. And then if she calls me up, later and says I got written up again for the same thing, it's going to be hard to feel any sympathy for her. And since she is trying to get out early, she's going to make every effort to do the right thing anyway. So I just want to hold DOC accountable for their own policy, their own rules. And I encourage all family members, all loved ones, all community leaders or advocates, or even staff members that see these things, to report them. Let's get the word out there. We can make our community safer. We can give power to our children by exposing things that go on, especially things that can be easily prevented. I have a big standing issue on medical. I worked really hard to help Paula Gardner get her medical treatment, good treatment for her medical condition, and they ignored it, so that they lost $9.9 million. And to continue to do that, it's more or less like, we gave $9.9 million. We're going to go on and we're going to keep doing it. And so we need to keep doing our part too. We need to keep suing them. And I'm encouraging people right and left to do that. And I'm giving them the information, and I'm doing the research for every single person that asks me to help them with medical or some mistreatment or something in there. And I definitely encourage the people who are out there who have gone through this and are broadcasting it or fighting it with a lawsuit. Let's go. Why not? Well, I hope you share any negative experiences you have when dealing with the DOC or any government agency. And I hope you encourage the people who are locked up, your loved ones, to share the information with you. Get it out there. Put a little spot on your social media page. And you never know, because somebody out there might be gathering people together for a class action suit. And because you posted something and they contacted you, you could make a little money. Because if they're willing to give it away, we should be willing to take it. Well, thanks for joining me, and have yourself a fabulous day, and go out and make some lovely memories for tomorrow.